Hey everybody, it's Bob from Do Better Work. There has been a lot of discussion about quiet quitting and loud quitting and employee disengagement and the current economic crisis in North America and Canada and really the world right now. And there's a lot of people saying a lot of things on social media, and I think that something needs to be said about that. So I've got a couple of Tick Tocks I want to talk to you guys about today. Let's just take a look at the first one here. It do not matter. It do not matter. It do not matter. Okay, so this one is interesting. I understand the way that she feels, because it feels like, oh, you know, I've just quit my job and my company has, within half an hour, the company has locked me out of my laptop and I don't have access to the corporate network anymore. And I feel like I'm just a number. I feel like I'm a cog in the machine. Okay, here's what's up. So when somebody resigns or is terminated from a job where you have company assets like a company laptop, a company phone, etc., right? There's several reasons why the company is going to want to lock you out of that stuff on your last day, because presumably you have access to some confidential information, and when you're no longer an employee in the company, you're not supposed to have access to that information anymore. So they lock you out of the network, disable your accounts, change your password, that sort of thing. And so that's for privacy issues. It's also because the company, they straight up just want to get their equipment back. So they'll lock you out of your company laptop, your company phone, because they're trying to motivate you to bring that stuff back. Now, in some cases, a company may have a program where they can, where you can purchase that equipment from your company after your last day at a discount if you want to keep that stuff. You still don't need access to the corporate network, but you can maybe purchase the equipment from your company. They may offer that, they may not, and that can change over time depending on whether or not the company has enough laptops to go around, for example. So certainly not something you can bank on, and it's not really what she's complaining about here. Right. The third reason why you'd get locked out of the company network is because they're also concerned about a leaving employee doing something belligerent using the corporate network. You know, you don't want that employee who just quit and maybe they were belligerent or they quit under really unfriendly terms, and they're tempted to send a big nasty email to the company-wide email address. So locking a person out of access to their corporate devices on their last day, this is pretty par for the course. This is a standard thing to prevent a lot of bad things from happening, and simply because the company wants their equipment back. There's nothing personal about this. They just need their stuff back, and you don't need access to the network anymore. I don't see why a person needs to get bent out of shape over this.
Quiet hiring will dominate in 2023, says HR expert, and you need to be prepared for it. Quiet hiring is when a company acquires new skills without actually hiring new employees. Essentially shuffling current employees around or hiring contract employees. People are upset because they see this as companies paying people the same or less for more work. If this happens to you, you should be compensated more for going above and beyond and delivering high quality work. If your jobs just change significantly without any pay or change the job title, you should talk to your boss or HR. You could say, the new work that you're assigning me outside of my job description requires a new contract. HR experts, if we're going to be doing this, let's make sure to do it right to prevent burnout and do the right thing.
Okay, that's an interesting video. But what he's talking about, like I've never heard of quiet hiring before. But what it sounds like to me is scope creep. Now, scope creep is not a brand new concept. And it basically happens as he's described. The company needs employees of a certain level to do various tasks that they didn't have to do before because they're trying to maneuver to make sure that some problem is resolved or that some new issue is taken care of or something is done in a different way to be more efficient or to not create an old problem. Now, the issue with scope creep is that sometimes these new procedures can get put on an employee's plate, but the old procedure that it's replacing doesn't always get taken away because we don't know if the new procedure is going to work out long term, and then maybe we forget to circle back and remove that old procedure, and then we end up just doing more stuff and getting compensated the same. So I understand the concern regarding scope creep. It is an issue. And if you feel like there's scope creep in your job and that a process is unnecessarily bloated now, then that is something you could discuss with your manager, and maybe a procedure could be changed to be more efficient by getting rid of some old procedures that no longer have any real purpose. You know, sometimes it's good to get rid of the old unnecessary red tape, just so that you can get your job done more easily, and that's good for your life and everybody's life. I'm a little bit worried about the advice he gives close to the end of his Tick Talk, where he says that you should go talk to your HR manager. I do think that they're an important point of contact if, as he says, your job description has changed really dramatically and it's no longer the job you were hired on to do. But be careful there, because you're also kind of going to your HR manager and saying, hey, I don't think I can do my job anymore. If that's the case, then you could talk about maybe some on-the-job training that could be offered to you and your peers who are responsible for the same sort of stuff. And that can be valuable in helping you do your job better. But again, if it's just scope creep, then there are healthier ways to go about doing this than just complaining about it. Coming up with a constructive solution, like saying, okay, well, if we just do this part of the process, then that effectively completes the task. Do we still need this old part of the process? Okay, this next video I find very entertaining.
You should be one of the first people in the office and one of the last to leave if you are in.
Nah. One of the fun things I just learned about was, everyone talked about quiet quitting, which is like doing the bare minimum, then walking away and leaving. There's a thing called loud quitting, and a surprisingly high percentage of people are doing it. So you've got your engaged employees, and I'm pretty sure that that's the kind of employee that this person is talking about, where they're passionate, first person in, last person to leave. Non-engaged employees are your quiet quitters. Actively disengaged, loud quitters. These are the people who are rocking in and actively sabotaging the company. And to be perfectly honest, in this cost of living crisis, and where corporate price gouging is ridiculous and wages are stagnant and people are having to have multiple jobs just to pay the bills, I personally think if you work for a large corporation, don't do this to a small business, not a mum and dad owned business. Do not do that. But if you're working for a big business, loud quit. Promise, it'll feel good. Also, dismantle capitalism.
Okay. I love the shout out there at the end where she's like, dismantle capitalism. She's very entertaining. Gosh, she's just so sassy. Okay. So Oh, one thing I immediately don't like about this TikTok is how, I mean, she acknowledges at the end there where she's like, oh, don't do this if it's a mom and pop, you know. Um, she's acknowledging that it's going to do people harm, but she's totally comfortable telling people to go ahead and do it. And I don't feel like that's really the right thing to be doing. We don't want to be telling people to hurt other people. I do like the pie chart that she puts up there in the video. It is somebody else's pie chart, but I do like that she included up there. She included it up there so we can see, you know, rough proportions of actively engaged employees versus disengaged employees versus disgruntled or actively disengaged employees, and you know, see that it's the smaller portion of people that are actually engaged, and I think that's useful today. So as is usually the case, we're not really getting the whole story of things here. I mean, I understand. I find her video very entertaining from her attitude alone, but the advice that she's giving people isn't really sound. I would say that the thing you want to keep in mind is that when a human resources or hiring manager hires an employee, they're looking to hire an employee that's going to be an engaged individual over the long term. And when it comes time to offer incentives, promotions, bonuses, you know, a person's eligibility for that next opportunity, managers are looking to promote engaged employees, and these are people who are behaviorally or by their performance easy to pick out from the crowd. Yes, it is the person who's coming in a little bit early, or maybe when they need to, staying a little bit late. You know, they are the keeners. Okay, then that person's invested in the company. They know that doing well in their job is good for the company and it's good for them. And if you can predict that person is going to have the same sort of investment going forward, then maybe they are a good choice for promotion. You know, maybe you want to give them more responsibility. Do you want to give more responsibility to the person who's actively disengaged and encouraging other employees to disengage from the workplace? Probably not. I don't think you really want that person in charge, and if you did put them in charge, I don't think you'd end up with a healthy workplace. So I wouldn't take her advice in this, but I'm glad that she's pointing out the issue with disengagement in the workplace. Okay, this one's really interesting.
What should be trending right now is the loud failing of employers, because you cannot have quiet quitting without it. Quiet quitting is the direct result, reaction, and consequence of loud failing by employers to meet the needs of its workforce. A reaction to the loud failing of companies to honor their responsibilities and commitments to workers. A reaction to the loud failing of organizations to recognize that their workers are human and should be treated with dignity and respect at all times. If you want to solve quiet quitting, stop the loud failing.
Okay, I've never heard of loud failing before, but I know what she's talking about. I have to say that I agree. The quiet quitting, the loud quitting, the disengagement of employees right now, it is tied heavily to the failure of employees to keep failure of employers to keep employees engaged. But again, we're not really getting the whole story. So I agree with what she's saying. But what we frequently fail to acknowledge, particularly now, we're happy to discuss the economic crisis, the cost of living crisis that's affecting everyone right now, but it's very popular to see large companies as like the cause of the problem and the some evil entity in the distance. What we should acknowledge is that the economic crisis is affecting companies as well. And while companies may quarter by quarter be reporting growth and profits, a lot of what motivates those reports about growth and profits is the companies trying to manage their relationship with their investors and the banks. Because if you don't maintain a good relationship with your investors and deliver to them growth and increased profits quarter by quarter, then your investors being unhappy can they can take away control of your company from you. You can find yourself being forced to resign. Issues with the banks can lead to trouble getting your loans and your lines of credit, which can affect your ability to pay your vendors and pay those wages and salaries, which are needed to retain your employees, of course. So it's a bit of a balancing act, and the current economic crisis is really a moving target. I mean, a lot of things are changing very rapidly. And I think that some companies may be making some miscalculations with regards to how to properly motivate their employees through the economic crisis, and may not be appropriately increasing the rewards for staying on and continuing to work for them, and that is leading to disengagement. Absolutely. The question is whether or not some companies might also be intentionally falling behind on wage increases because they are only really interested in keeping on employees who are willing to continue to put in the work as their wage diminishes somewhat. If they're engaged by something else, something other than their compensation, then that might be a choice employee for that company. And by attrition, by simply allowing disengaged employees to find other jobs, an employer can rid itself of employees that aren't willing to stick around through tough times, and then they can take action to replace those employees or not as they see fit after those maybe somewhat troublesome employees leave the company. So that's a theory. Okay, I've got one last very entertaining one.
Attention Walmart shoppers and associates, my name is Beth from Electronics. I've been working at Walmart for almost 5 years, and I can say that everyone here is overworked and underpaid. The attendant policy is we are treated from management and customers poorly every day. Whenever we have a problem with it, we're told that we're replaceable. I'm tired of the constant gaslighting. This company treats their elderly associates like shit. To Jared, our store manager, you're a pervert. Greta and Kathy, shame on y'all for treating your associates the way you do. I hope you don't speak to your families the way you speak to us. Shout out to Cominique, Patty, Chardell, and so many more. Walmart doesn't deserve y'all. Manage it and this job. I quit.
Okay, so well, it was very entertaining, and I'm sure it's something that many of us have probably dreamed up doing on our worst days. I would always advise a person to take terminations and resignations behind closed doors with your manager. This is something you should be doing in private, both for the company's benefit and for yours. What Beth from Electronics may fail to realize is that by publicly quitting, she's opening herself up to quite a lot of risk. The concern here is that if anything were to happen as a consequence or coincidentally even occurring at the same time as Beth quitting, then Beth might be on the hook for this legally. And maybe she hasn't thought about that. She's making some allegations over the public address system. If a bunch of her coworkers decides to up and quit the same day, then she might be found responsible for inciting an employee walkout, which perhaps wasn't her intention. If customers en masse decide to turn around and leave the store, then there's an opportunity cost for the average purchases that these people may have made. If disgruntled employees decide to turn around and break some computers or other store assets following her announcement on the public address system, then it could be argued that she has incited these people to those actions, and she may be found legally responsible for that. And a big company like Walmart absolutely has administrative people who can do some quick calculations to find out what the costs of all of these things are. And a big company like Walmart also has a team of expensive lawyers who would be very happy to pin something like this on Beth from Electronics, and they know where to find Beth from Electronics. And she may very much regret having made these allegations and statements over the public address system. So I think that the risk of litigation is probably not something that she considered, and would be a really bad call. Like I said, the cost-benefit analysis of this is really poor. It's really not in her favor. You also need to consider that when you take action like this, that it can be really damaging to your reputation as an employee. Like, I don't know if this was a big city or a small town, or to what extent an action like this is going to damage Beth's reputation, but it could potentially affect her ability to find another job in the area. Certainly, she's not going to work for Walmart ever again, and she's not going to get a reference from them, but it doesn't sound like that was going to happen anyway, or that was a concern. But any job, this is something that could follow her for an indeterminate amount of time, and certainly she could regret having quit in this way. On top of all that, if I can dip into the morality of this, I think you need to ask yourself what kind of a person you want to be. I think that you can either be a hardworking, ethically upright, respectable human being, or you can be the sort of person that likes to sling proverbial mud and tip over apple carts when you're hurt or abused. But I don't think a person really gets to be both. I understand the desire to voice your frustrations when you have the opportunity, but making accusations over a loudspeaker and it's a situation where a person can't defend themselves. I don't know if she was seeking some sort of justice for a wrong done, or she refers to her boss as a pervert. I don't know what the story is behind that, even if her boss Jared were able to speak in his defense. I mean, it's a Tick Tocks, so what evidence is there really? But I think it's always best, like I said, to do this sort of stuff behind closed doors and quietly. Nobody needs this kind of this risk and damage to their reputation, damage to other people's reputations. I just don't think it's the right thing to do. And certainly this economic crisis is not going anywhere soon. And we do appear to be coming up with new memes about it on an almost daily basis, which is very entertaining, if not terribly constructive. But I'll be here to talk about more as it comes up. Thanks for joining me today anyway. Bye.